feel better. So drinking and hydrating is good. Okay? So I recommend you do that. Now, the other thing is for all clients, even the ones who don't have a sugar addiction, I do not give candy away. There's neurofeedback practitioners who are very well intended and they reward with candy. Do not reward with candy. I don't recommend that you reward with candy. Okay? Give them toys, give them tokens, something that it can exchange for a prize, but not the candy because it's just going to make things worse. So with that in mind, we train for 2 minutes initially, and they rest for 1 minute, they hydrate, and they can do some exercising. Sometimes when a client has done 20 to 40 sessions, I go up to 5 minutes. But I don't do more than that. Okay? Because it's too much. The brain has a learning curve that you have to respect. So start 2 minutes to 3 minutes, go up to 5 minutes tops. And give them 1.5 minutes to rest, to eat something, to hydrate. Okay? Now sometimes the client will be very tired during the session. The client will be very, very tired during the session. Sometimes they come in with a flu, sometimes they didn't sleep well, sometimes they get bad news. It happens. So don't expect the client to do well every session. Some sessions are going to be just bad sessions. The client's going to do poorly. And that's okay. Don't get frustrated. Good. Next step, then, is threshold setting. And threshold setting has a time option. So you're going to see that this is set up at 500 milliseconds, half a second. And this is to inhibit the feedback. So every time the theta crosses over the threshold for more than half a second, the chip is not going to fire. And people ask me, do I choose half a second? Do I choose 1 second? Do I choose a quarter of a second? Do I not choose anything? Well, the answer is it depends. Some literature is going to say, and Barry Sterman was big in the discoverer of the SMR rhythm, will say 250 seconds is where you get good, that's how you get operant conditioning, 250 seconds. Again, it depends on the client. For clients that are new, I recommend that you start with 500. Okay? Or 250. As the client gets better, if you can, go to 0. So when they've done 15, 21st sessions, you can start training with 0. Which means that there's no time delay. Every time the bar crosses, it's going to immediately inhibit the feedback. Now, I like to do something which is varying the training. And I recommend that you do that too. So I recommend that you use 500 one session, then 250, then 0. And you vary it. You keep it different and novel. Because the brain likes that. And the brain needs it. Think about it. If you do this, when you do the same thing every day of your life for a few days, then you get tired. You know, if you were to eat chicken for lunch for 1 week, next thing you see a live chicken, you're gonna run away. So one day you eat chicken, the next day you eat rice, the next day you have soup. The brain doesn't like linear thinking, linear training. So do it differently. And it's good because the brain gets used to different modes. That's my taking. I mean, and some of my colleagues might criticize me for it, and they're within their right. That's how I do it, and that's how it works for me. You don't have to do it that way. I mean, the things that I'm telling you, you don't have to do them. These are just suggestions. And I recommend that you find your own style. That's very important. Find your own style of training. So you can start with 500. You can go to 0. whichever you want, okay? The literature says 250 is the appropriate time to get operant conditioning. So I'm gonna click OK, and I'm gonna hit play, and if you see it's firing constantly because it's got a delay. It's got a delay. If I go to 0, for instance, I change this to 0, well, it's going to be harder for the client. But if the bar goes up, so every time it goes up, see, there's no delay, it's going to stop the firing. So it's up to you to decide. But for new clients, usually start with 500. You want to make it easy on them. I mean, don't go too harsh on them because they need to learn. But you're going to have fast learners. You're going to have fast learners. So you can challenge them right away. Athletes, they love to be challenged. They will ask you, make it hard. Make it challenging, make it difficult. All right? That's one thing. So that's the threshold setting for the time, correct? If you notice, the blue bar, which is high beta, is jumping quite a lot, which means this client is producing a lot of high beta. So one option that you have is that you can smooth it. So you can control how fast the bar moves. If you go right click and you go display options and ranges, you have the smoothing here. And it's set up at 8. For new clients, I set up all the way up to 64. And look at how nice that looks. So it's not jumping that much. Do I want to keep it at 64 all the time? No. I want to vary it. I want to make it variable, new, random. So next session the client comes, I'm going to go, you know what? I'm going to see how you do at 32. Let's go. So let's go 50% reduction. And then you challenge them. But when they're new, usually for the first 10 sessions, go with 500 to 250 milliseconds and go with the smoothing at 64 maybe. I mean, it's just going to make it easy on the client. And so that way you have an idea, and you can do the same with the theta. Display options and ranges, go to 64, and that makes it easy on you. So again, these are the kinds of things that you would talk to with a mentor. If you find a mentor, then you know it's gonna be easy for you to learn those things. And then the experience will tell you. You know, what's the best kind of experience and best kind of learning? Clinical work. Client work is going to give you the experience for that. So far, so good? Any questions? Okay, so we have that. We have the threshold set up, we have the feedback set up, we have the smoothing. You can train with sound if you want to. So you can make it more contingent to the training. If I wanted to, I could add a tone that's going to signal the brain that they're doing a good job. And I could do it with the reward. So I could go, I could right click on it, and I could say feedback options and thresholds. So I want to say above threshold, I'm going to do a reward, which is a sound. So I go MIDI tone feedback. I'm going to use a tone. I'm going to go edit, and I know this sound is going to, there's problems with audio. Yes. Oh, there we go. That's right. There we go. Thank you. So So that's the ship firing, right? But I played this for the client. So I go feedback options and thresholds, I do edit, and I play them for the client, and I let the client choose which one he or she likes. Okay? Because I could choose this one, and the client will not like it. So they will start tensing up. So let's say the client likes that one, right? So again, I click OK, and I choose whether I want to give it time. So I choose whether I want to delay it half a second and force the brain to train a little more. Okay. Now for the reward, it's usually good to set a time frame, a time delay, because we're forcing those neurons to fire just a little longer. So let's say we make it 500. So what's going to happen is that the brain is going to have to hold the SMR, or the 12 to 15, for at least half a second before the tone is presented. And we hit OK, and we hit play. And there you go, there's your tone. So every time he goes below threshold and above threshold, the tone is going to play. So let's make this a little higher here. There you go. So I tell the client, every time you hear the tone, it means that you're focused and relaxed. Okay? Which brings me to the next point. Every time you train the client, the instruction is, before you begin the session, I want you to focus, I want you to relax. That's all you tell the client. I want you to be relaxed and focused. What does that mean? Well, relaxed means I want you to focus on your muscles. Pay attention to your face muscles, your neck muscles, your shoulder muscles. Because if the client is tense, the beta is going to go up because the EMG is going up, which means there's more anxiety. And when I say focused, I mean just try to empty your mind as much as you can. And focus on the ship firing. And I tell the client, what are the two things you have to do? I have to be relaxed and focused. So you check they're paying attention to you. Okay, relaxed and focused. That's the two things they have to do. And at first it's going to sound strange to them because they're not going to know how to focus. They're relaxed, they understand they have to relax. But the focus, they don't understand what the process behind it is. And that's okay. It takes sessions for them to get the idea. And I also tell them, when you feel the ship is firing constantly, I want you to pay attention what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And I want you to replicate it. So the client is going to use some introspection, and they're gonna see, and they're gonna feel what it is like to be in the zone. So then they can use it over and over and over again. Because neurofeedback is a self-discovery process. It's a trial and error process. And it's via that trial and error that the brain learns. And we help the client. So far so good? So for the reward, it's usually good to set up a time. For the inhibit, it depends. Depends on you, depends on the client, depends on how the session is going, depends on what the challenges are for that session, depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So again, I recommend that you experiment. I mean, do not experiment to the point the client just turns into a guinea pig, but experiment with different things to the point where you're doing an ethical, responsible job. All right? Now, the next point is how do we set the ranges for the inhibitor or the reward? So we already know how to set the threshold. We already know how to set the time. We know that we can set a tone, or we can do either auditory or just visual feedback. Now we're going to go with the band ranges. So when we looked at the EEG, we saw 2 to 20, 2 to 13 for the suppress and the reward. Okay? That's also a variable concept. Where do you go in biotrace to do it? Well, let's say we're playing here. And we have the client playing, and we want them to fire, not fire, so you set it. You go to configuration and you go to the third option, and it's going to display a window where you have all your setups. See them right here? So here's your EEG raw 1, EEG raw 2, and then we work on each channel. So here's your theta brainwave for channel 1 and alpha, and it's set up at its default frequency: 4 to 8, 8 to 12, 12 to 15, 15 to 18, and so on and so forth. You can leave it like that if you want to, or you can go with what the brain map tells you. Now the other option is to go with what your gut instinct and your clinical experience tell you, and most importantly, with what your client is responding to. So let's look at the. I'm gonna go back to the high beta, and I'm gonna take out the smoothing because we saw that was jumping too much. So let's go back to this and see how that high beta is going. So normally we want to make it smoother because that's just too much, right? The other option is that I can go here to the channel, and I have high beta, channel 66, which is set up from 21 to 35. The way you're going to set up the frequencies is based largely on how your client is responding. Okay? So 25 to 35, let's say the client is feeling too anxious. And it's clear that the client is feeling too anxious because look at what that is doing. Right? So what are we going to do? Are we going to augment it? Are we going to make it the range larger and broader, or are we going to reduce it? What will you do? So you reduce it. Why? Because you want to reduce the reaction of the client, right? So instead of doing 21 to 35, I'm going to see if I can do 21 to 30. All right? And see what happens. So I can do that on the fly. I can do it while the client is training. So I'm going to go 21, 34, and 30. And that made it a little better, see? So see how that changes? Now I need to smooth it, but that helps out. Now, so we're going to leave it at 21 to 30, and we train for a few minutes. Then I ask the client, how's the anxiety? Is it better? Is it worse? Or is it the same? If the client says the same, we train for a little longer. If after a few minutes he says it's the same, we need to change it again. If I change it and I ask the client, how is the anxiety feeling? Is it better? Is it worse? Or is it the same? And if they say it's better, then we knew that's a better frequency. If he says I'm worse, then you need to change it again. So instead of going 21 to 30, you could go 21 to 25, or 21 to 28, or 21 to 22. Okay? This is tweaking the frequency so that we can synchronize and go into symphony and with the and we get tuned with the brain. So think of these as when you're looking for for a radio station in your radio in your car, and it takes you to find the right frequency to get to that radio station. Otherwise, you're getting noise. So what you're doing is using this to attune the brain. And your client's brain will go, oh, that's the frequency. Because they will feel relaxed and they will feel focused. So for the high frequencies, if the client's feeling too anxious, bring them down. Now what happens if you bring it down too much? The client will go, oh, I'm sleepy now. So you bring it up a little bit. And you tweak it until your client says, I'm feeling it right there. I feel relaxed and I feel focused, and the training is progressing smoothly and you're achieving the objectives of the session. So sometimes, for instance, with theta, a lot of people go the conventional way. They go 4 to 8. All right? Sometimes I go 5 to 7. And what I will do is I will find my theta channel, and I go 5 to 7. And I trained I trained there for a while. Okay? Or I go, or if I see that it is getting better, I stay there. If I see the clients falling asleep, I will go maybe 5 to 8. Okay? There's no exact formula for this. It's trial and error. And it takes talking to your client. So do not change the frequency and expect your client to feel better. You need to ask them. Okay? Because some clients trust you so much that if you're causing anxiety, they're gonna think that's part of the process. And they get shy about it, and they're afraid to say anything. No, have the client talk to you. Right? You need to have the client talk to you. Tell me how he feels. If he feels worse, please tell me right away. If you get a headache, tell me right away. If you get sleepy, tell me before you fall asleep. All right? Tell me right away. And that's the teamwork that I was talking about when we first started the session this morning. You're tweaking, and the brain is responding, and the client is telling you, yes, I like it, no, I don't like it. So sometimes I will go 5 to 7, sometimes I'll go 5 to 6. If the theta is too stubborn and he's not responding, he's not budging, I will just go 5 to 6 and I train them for a few sessions. The important thing is that the client gets better. And what are the measures of change that we look for? Well, one is the qEEG. We want changes in the qEEG from 20 sessions to another 20 sessions. So if the brain map looks better, it means we're doing the right work, the right job. And the other one is the client's report. I'm feeling better, I'm sleeping better. Oh, little Timmy is doing his homework now. We're not getting notes from school anymore. I'm not depressed. My coworkers and friends tell me I look happier. So those two things you look for. Client reports and the numbers changing in the direction that you're looking for. And you do that regardless of what type of feedback you're using. So you could use this, or you could use a movie, or a video training. So let's load another screen here, and you can use it, for instance, and you can play a movie or any other kind of video. So see, here's the auto threshold. So if you want to turn it off, you turn it off, and you set the threshold, whatever you want to set it for the session. So let's do this. Let's look for the same thing. And that has some audio, right? So you can take the audio away, or you can leave the audio. Where do you go? You go here, feedback options and thresholds, and you can say no feedback. Say no feedback, sorry. There you go. Now, yes?
When do you decide to change the script? Is during session or virtual session?
When do I decide to change the screen? Oh, you mean the type of feedback? I usually use different screens for each session. Yeah, prevent boredom. Yeah. Now, sometimes I will use the same screen and make the session as boring as I can. Why? Because the brain needs to train under those conditions. Sometimes the training needs to be a little boring. Because sometimes we do repetitious things. All of us have to do repetitious things every now and then, and we want the brain to work under those conditions. Now, with one of the advantages of training with movies is that, for instance, with children, they can use the same movie for 100 sessions. They can watch Wreck-It Ralph, or the Rugrats, or Smurfs, or whatever movie they're watching, they can watch it for 100 sessions. The problem is if you can tolerate it. Because for the therapist, it can get really boring to watch the same movie over and over and over again. So you have to negotiate that with the client. There's a game called Zucor, and I'm going to show it to you. Well, no, it's not called Zucor. Zucor is the company that makes the game, and they make games for biofeedback and neurofeedback. So what I'm going to use is a dual screen here. There we go. And I'm gonna close this one here. Oops. So I'm gonna reopen BioTrace. And I recommend, if you can, that you buy the Zucor games. I'm going to show you why. Because they're designed for this purpose, and they're very useful. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to open up one called Drive. Okay, and you're going to see the graphs are beautiful, very, very nice. Okay, and it's a car racing game. Okay, what I like about Drive is that it has several options. It's got about 20 different tracks. It's got cars that you can choose from, and you can set up the training settings. So I'm gonna go with I'm gonna open demo. So you have different options here. You can score. You can choose how long they go for. So for instance, I go at least 3 minutes, and we do about, I don't know, 7 periods per session, and you can do the auto start at the next period. So it's all timed. I usually give them about 90 seconds. So when they end up the first 3 minutes, they get 90 seconds to rest. So they get to eat something and hydrate, and then the next period starts automatically. You can choose the scoring, and here it's interesting because they start with the slowest car, and for every 10, 20,000 points you can choose that. You can make it 50,000 points, you can make it 1,000,000 points, you can make it 5 points. I usually go with 15,000 points for each. So for each 15,000 points they scored, they can use a new car and they can use a new track. So it makes it more stimulating.